Scott had never believed in love at first sight until Maya. Their connection was magnetic, an unspoken current drawing them together long before either of them acknowledged it. It started with glances across the office, fleeting moments that held an intoxicating promise. Then came the late nights at work, the stolen touches that sent shivers down his spine, the way her soft, knowing smiles made him feel like the most desirable man alive. When they finally crossed the line, it was electric, her body pressed against his in the dim glow of the city skyline. Fingers tangled in his hair, her breath hot against his lips as she whispered his name. Their passion was insatiable, each night a symphony of tangled sheets and whispered confessions. Maya was unlike any woman Scott had ever known, seductive yet sweet, confident yet vulnerable. Her body molded perfectly against his, her size a melody that played only for him. He fell hard, drowning in her touch, believing their love was rare, unbreakable. When they married, Scott thought he had won the ultimate prize, a woman who not only set his soul on fire, but promised to build a life beside him. But passion, as he would soon learn, can be the cruelest illusion. Scott had always been the kind of man who found comfort in routine and structure. His life was built on the foundation of discipline, his career as an architect, his fitness regimen, even the way he liked his coffee. Maya, on the other hand, was a storm wrapped in silk, unpredictable and intoxicating. From the moment she stepped into his life, she brought color to the otherwise gray monotony of his days. He fell hard, blindly, foolishly. Their marriage wasn't just built on love. It was built on the sheer force of their chemistry. In the beginning, everything felt perfect. Scott would come home from long days at work to find Maya waiting for him, draped in something barely there. Her lips curving into a mischievous smile as she pulled him into their bedroom. Their nights were filled with passion so fierce it left him breathless. Her body entwined with his beneath the dim glow of the bedside lamp. She made him feel alive, like the king of a world she had created just for them. He didn't think to question it. But over time, something began to shift. The stolen kisses turned into quick pecks. The late-night whispers were replaced with the glow of her phone screen as she scrolled endlessly. The lingerie that once greeted him at the door was now tucked away in the back of the closet, forgotten. At first, he blamed himself. Maybe he had been too consumed by work. Maybe he hadn't been paying enough attention to her. He tried to reignite the spark. Surprise dinners, spontaneous weekend trips, small touches meant to remind her of the fire they once had. But Maya's reactions were distant, her enthusiasm dulled. She started coming home later, her excuses flimsy, her perfume lingering on her skin in a way that didn't quite match the places she claimed to have been. Scott wanted to believe her, to hold on to the illusion of the woman he married. But deep down, a gnawing unease settled in his gut. Something was changing, something he couldn't ignore. He just wasn't ready to face the truth. Not yet. Scott's suspicions started as whispers in the back of his mind. Faint, uncertain, easy to dismiss. But doubt has a way of creeping in like a slow leak, small at first, until it floods everything. It was in the way Maya barely met his eyes when she spoke, the way she always seemed to be in a rush, as if staying in their home too long made her restless. She used to crave his touch, practically melt into him when he pulled her close. Now, she stiffened under his hands, offering only a hollow smile before pulling away, muttering something about being tired or stressed. The first real clue came on a random Tuesday. Scott had planned to surprise Maya by picking up her favorite pastries from a cafe across town, a place they used to go when they were still wrapped up in the honeymoon haze of their marriage. He texted her, asking if she wanted anything else, but the message remained unread. He figured she was busy and didn't think much of it, until he drove past a little wine bar on his way home. At first, it was just a glance, the quick flick of his eyes over the outdoor seating area. But then he saw her, Maya, sitting at a small table, a glass of red in hand, laughing in a way he hadn't seen in months. And beside her, another man. He wasn't just a friend. Scott could tell by the way their knees touched under the table, by the way Maya leaned in when he spoke, her lips curved in that teasing smile she used to save for Scott alone. His grip tightened on the steering wheel, heart pounding against his ribs. A cold sensation washed over him. Not just anger, not just betrayal, but the stark realization that everything he had been trying to ignore was true. But instead of confronting her, Scott drove home, his mind a storm of questions. Confrontation would come later. For now, he needed proof. He needed to know just how deep this deception ran. And when the truth finally came, he would make sure Maya felt every ounce of the betrayal she had carved into his heart. Scott's hands trembled slightly as he scrolled through the messages on Maya's phone. He had told himself he wouldn't do this, that he wouldn't stoop to invading her privacy. But privacy wasn't a privilege she deserved anymore. The opportunity had presented itself that morning when Maya, in a rush to leave, had carelessly left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. Scott had stared at it for a long moment, the screen lighting up with a notification. His name wasn't the one appearing. Instead, it was Liam. His gut twisted, but he swallowed the bile rising in his throat and tapped into her messages. And there it was, everything. Can't wait to see you tonight. Wish I could stay the whole weekend like last time. He suspects nothing. He's still so trusting, so easy. You drive me crazy. Can't stop thinking about last night. The way you. Scott stopped reading, his vision blurring. His chest felt like it was being crushed by a weight too heavy to bear, his pulse pounding loud enough to drown out all rational thought. He wanted to believe there was some mistake, some misunderstanding, but the proof was right there. Message after message, stolen moments captured in words and emojis, hidden plans laid bare. His fingers tightened around the phone as the bitter taste of betrayal settled in. She hadn't just lied. She had built an entire second life behind his back. How many nights had she returned home from girls' night, lips still swollen from Liam's kisses? How many times had she slid into bed beside him, whispering she was tired, while carrying the scent of another man's touch? Scott forced himself to exhale, to think beyond the pain tearing through his chest. He wouldn't explode, wouldn't rage, no. That would be too easy for her. Instead, he would be patient. He would gather every piece of evidence he needed, and when the moment was right, he would unravel Maya's world piece by piece. Just as she had done to him. She had underestimated him. That would be her first mistake, but it wouldn't be her last. Scott didn't confront Maya immediately. That would have been reckless. Too emotional. Instead, he moved with the precision of a surgeon, cutting away at the illusion of their marriage piece by piece. He went about his days as if nothing had changed, kissing her cheek in the mornings, murmuring good night in the evenings, all while carefully constructing the trap that would ensnare her when the time was right. The first step was securing his assets. He met with Tyler, his longtime friend and lawyer, under the pretense of discussing investments. But behind closed doors, Tyler listened in silence as Scott laid out the truth. When Scott finished, his friend leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply. She's been planning her escape, Tyler muttered, flipping through the messages Scott had printed out. You were supposed to be her safety net until she could leave comfortably. She's playing the long game. Scott clenched his jaw, nodding. He had already suspected as much. Maya was always meticulous, always calculating. And now she was waiting, biding her time until the moment she could take everything she wanted from him. She won't get that chance, Scott said, voice cold. Over the next few days, he rerouted his direct deposits, ensuring his income flowed into an account Maya had no access to. He froze their joint savings, preventing any sudden, unexplained withdrawals. When she came home one evening, casually mentioning that her card had declined at the boutique, Scott feigned confusion. Must be a bank error, he said smoothly. I'll check with them tomorrow. She smiled, kissing him softly. Thanks, babe. Scott held her close, inhaling the scent of her perfume, the same one she had probably worn for Liam. His stomach churned, but he remained still. She didn't realize it yet, but the ground beneath her was already crumbling. The moment she thought she had all the power was the same moment Scott was preparing to rip it away. She thought she was in control. She had no idea that her carefully curated world was about to be destroyed by the very man she had underestimated the most. Scott had spent years giving Maya everything, his time, his devotion, his financial security, but those days were over. The moment she chose deception over loyalty, she became nothing more than a problem he needed to solve. And Scott was nothing if not efficient when it came to solving problems. The night before Maya was set to leave for her weekend with Camille, Scott set the final pieces of his plan into motion. He sat at the dining table, sipping a glass of bourbon, watching as she flitted around their bedroom, packing her bags. She was careful, meticulous, only bringing enough to make it look like a casual getaway. But Scott knew better. She wasn't visiting Camille. She was meeting Liam. You sure you don't want to come with me? She teased, leaning against the doorframe, her robe slipping slightly to reveal smooth, bronzed skin. Scott forced a smirk, pretending to consider it. I'd hate to ruin your girl's weekend. She laughed, crossing the room to straddle his lap, pressing a slow, deliberate kiss against his neck. You're so good to me, she whispered, her nails tracing along his jawline. I don't deserve you. Scott nearly flinched at the irony. Instead, he played his part, gripping her waist, meeting her lips with just enough heat to make her believe nothing had changed. He let her think she still had the upper hand, that he was still blindly in love, desperate for her affection. That night, after she fell asleep curled beside him, Scott retrieved his phone and checked the notifications from the private investigator. As expected, Maya and Liam had booked a luxury resort, one Scott's money had unknowingly funded for months. The next morning, he kissed her goodbye at the door, watching as she drove off with an easy smile, humming to herself like a woman without a care in the world. What she didn't know was that Scott had already spoken to Sarah, Liam's wife. He had sent her everything: messages, photos, receipts. Maya thought she was slipping away unnoticed. She had no idea that when she returned, everything she thought was hers would already be gone. Scott didn't answer Maya's calls. Not when she texted him good night from the resort. Not when she sent a picture of a beautiful sunset, meant to maintain the illusion of innocence. And certainly not when she finally noticed her credit card had been declined. He imagined the scene. Her and Liam at some overpriced dinner, her casually handing over the card only to be met with an awkward pause, then the waiter returning with a polite but firm, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your card has been declined." By the time she messaged him with Scott, "Something's wrong with my card. Can you check?" He was already 3 steps ahead. He had frozen the joint accounts, redirected his paychecks, and transferred his savings into an account only he could access. Maya had spent years luxuriating in the life he built. Now, she was about to get a taste of what it felt like to be truly on her own. That night, he received another message, short, clipped, tinged with annoyance. "Maya, seriously, what's going on? I'm trying to check out tomorrow. Just call me." He could have answered, could have strung her along a little longer, but silence was far more powerful. Let her squirm. Let her feel the discomfort of uncertainty, the same uncertainty she had forced on him for the past year while she slipped between the sheets with another man. Instead, Scott spent the evening preparing for what came next. He boxed up the last of Maya's belongings, leaving nothing but an empty, impersonal space where her presence used to be. The photo frames were packed away. The scent of her expensive perfume was scrubbed from the sheets. By the time she returned, she wouldn't just be walking into their home. She'd be walking into the remains of a life she no longer had any claim to. And, just to make sure she got the message loud and clear, Scott left an envelope on the dining table. Inside were divorce papers, screenshots of her affair, and a simple note scrawled in his precise handwriting. "Your past due balance has been settled. Enjoy your new life." Maya arrived home late, dragging her suitcase through the door with an exhausted sigh, expecting the usual, Scott waiting with his arms crossed, ready to argue. Maybe even beg for the truth. She had a half-baked excuse prepared, something about miscommunication and stress, something to pacify him, just enough to keep her comfort intact. But the house felt different. The moment she stepped inside, an eerie stillness wrapped around her. The usual warmth was gone, replaced by something cold and sterile. The framed photos of their happiest moments, her favorite manipulations of reality, had vanished from the walls. The bookshelves were bare. The scent of Scott's cologne, which usually lingered in the air, had faded. The living room, once a shared space of intimacy and connection, felt abandoned, stripped of everything familiar. Her eyes landed on the dining table. An envelope. She knew before she even opened it. Hands trembling, she pulled out the contents, printed screenshots, each damning, each undeniable. Photos of her and Liam. Text messages that didn't just imply, but confirmed every dirty secret. Conversations where she had mocked Scott's devotion, laughed about how easy it was to keep him in the dark. And, at the very bottom, the divorce papers signed and dated. Then the note. "Your past due balance has been settled. Enjoy your new life." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. She fumbled for her phone, dialing Scott's number, her heart hammering. It rang once. Twice. Voicemail. "Scott, please," she whispered, the desperation clawing at her throat. "Can we just talk? I don't even know what to say." Silence. A sob built in her chest, but she swallowed it down. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Scott was supposed to plead, to fight for her, to let her manipulate him into one more chance. Instead, He had done the one thing she never expected. He had erased her. Scott wasn't waiting for her to explain. He wasn't waiting for her at all. And that was when the real panic set in. Maya's desperation grew with every unanswered call, every message left unread. Scott had vanished from her life like a ghost, leaving nothing but the wreckage she had created. She wasn't used to this, to being ignored, to losing control. She had always thought she could talk her way out of anything, smooth things over with enough tears and well-placed words. But this time, there was no audience for her performance. Frantic, she reached out to Liam, expecting comfort, reassurance. Instead, she was met with something colder than Scott's silence, indifference. Maya, he sighed over the phone, voice distant. This isn't my problem. She almost dropped the phone. What do you mean? You said we were in this together. Liam exhaled heavily, the kind of sigh a man gives when he's already made up his mind. Look, your husband left. That was between you two. But now Sarah knows everything. She took the kids and filed for divorce. My life is falling apart, and I can't deal with yours too. Her stomach twisted. Wait, Sarah knows? How? Liam hesitated. Scott. The realization hit her like a train. Scott hadn't just walked away. He had made sure every bridge she relied on had burned to ash. Maya opened her mouth to argue, to beg. But the line went dead. She stood there, phone limp in her hands, as the walls of her perfect little fantasy crumbled. Liam was gone. Scott was gone. Her life, the one she had so carefully curated, had slipped through her fingers like sand. For the first time in years, Maya had no backup plan, no safety net. And for the first time in her life, she realized what it truly meant to lose. Scott stood at the edge of his new beginning, inhaling the crisp evening air as the city hummed quietly around him. 6 months had passed since he had walked away from Maya, and in that time, he had rebuilt not just his life, but himself. The weight of betrayal had faded, replaced by something lighter, clarity, peace. Maya had tried to reach out, first with apologies, then with anger, and finally with silence. He had ignored it all. Her downfall had been of her own making, and he had no intention of giving her another foothold in his world. Now, his life was his own again. His work thrived, his mind was sharper, his body stronger. He had rediscovered himself in the quiet moments, in morning runs, in deep conversations with friends he had once neglected, in the thrill of meeting someone new without the shadow of his past lingering overhead. As he sipped his coffee, his phone buzzed, a message from Sarah. Thank you. Simple, yet weighty. He smiled, knowing she, too, had found her own freedom. Scott had lost something once, but in the end, he had gained everything that truly mattered. And that, he realized, was the best kind of revenge. Scott's story is a powerful reminder that self-respect and boundaries are non-negotiable in any relationship. In today's world, where distractions and temptations are abundant, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters: trust, loyalty, and genuine connection. If you ever feel undervalued, ignored, or betrayed, don't cling to someone who doesn't appreciate you. Instead, invest in yourself. Strengthen your mind, body, and future. Walk away from those who drain you, and surround yourself with those who uplift you. True healing comes not from revenge, but from rebuilding a life so fulfilling that your past becomes irrelevant.